Hi, and welcome back to Realistic Sustainability. I'm Mike, and I'm not here with Nick. I'm not. Nick and I are still struggling to get on schedule, but don't worry. It's not just me this time rambling on to myself, doing shorts when they're supposed to be long. I did go get Mr. Rob Boggan.
Tis I. Hello.
Hello, and the classic Star Wars hoodie.
Oh yeah.
That is on point. I'm loving every second of it.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a Christmas gift, and I wear this thing quite a bit. I love all the different starships.
Well, I appreciate you jumping on and joining the show today. Nick has been so ungodly busy, not just with catering, but he opened up something called Soul Box, where he's actually doing meal prep for people, and he's running food all over Genesee and Shiawassee County on a regular basis, and still holding that normal job because they're running out of people. So Nick's heart is 3 times the size of a small car, and he is going to be he refuses to let that place fall, so he's constantly cooking there too. So I really do appreciate you stepping in and helping us out here.
Not a problem at all. I did see that. The Soul Box looks like it is going to be incredible. It actually already is. I saw a couple of pictures of the meals that he's making. So kudos to him for keeping it going. And yeah, man, anytime I get a chance to step in and talk sustainability or learn something more importantly, I'm all about it. I truly genuinely enjoy these. So I'm looking forward to it tonight.
Well, in this episode, I have already recorded with Nick, but as you know, I've been disappointed with the audio of my headset when we're doing something outside of the podcast. Plus, it really extends the amount of edit time it takes in a podcast because you guys may not know this, but with Nick and I, we breathe a lot and you could hear it through the speakers. And we go through there and take out every single breath we can, which, by the way, takes hours. So I moved to a boom style microphone, pretending to be professional. And Nick and I recorded, and I did not stay right next to my microphone. So we have a recording where Nick talks to, well, basically no one periodically because you know me, I like to move. I like to move my body around and use my hands. And I did not realize I got to stay within about 8 inches of this thing or it does not pick me up.
Yeah, you have a zest when you speak. You're always, you're very animated, and as far as the breathing, man, there's nothing wrong with having a lust for learning. It's just
Oh.
heavy breathing, learning, spitting the knowledge, and I'm pretty sure that translates to people. So yeah. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm super. I know you're about to get into it, but I am super excited to talk about the topic today because it was something that I had no idea was a thing. It was something that I had no idea even existed. Like I legit thought you finally lost your mind and just typed something into the show notes.
No, and this is something that if you're a longtime listener, you're going to hear about every fall because I do believe it's extremely important that we talk about it on a regular basis and we build off it each year, adding a little more information or new information because it's something that, like you said, people don't know about. They don't even think about it, and there's so much to it that I just feel like every fall at minimum, spring it would be worthwhile too, but every fall I do shorts and I do a show because it is extremely important to talk about sick building syndrome, and that's what we're going to talk about this week because it is a health problem, especially in America.
I noticed that it is something that most I don't want to say government officials, but most officials in general typically try to downplay, like, hey, this isn't a thing even.
Well, and it's because it's hard to control, first of all. It is something that very few people understand. So I know especially when you're a climate nut and all these other things like me, they always play those down because if they don't know the details, they don't want to look stupid. So they just kind of pretend like it's not a big deal in the hopes that since you don't know much about it, you'll just move on to something else too. And it's kind of a costly fix, which I don't think it really is. They think it's a costly fix. I think knowledge helps resolve a lot of these problems. And if they just acknowledge that, yes, it's a thing, here's some steps you can do to help minimize it, it wouldn't be something they had to hide behind. It is the ignorance of the topic that makes them hide, and it sounds really scary. Sick building syndrome could be a dozen different things if you didn't know anything about it. But the fact that it's a syndrome tells you that it isn't uncommon. And a lot of times I tell the same stories on some of these, and I'm going to cover some of them again because it hits home how important it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, can be said about a lot of things, but with sick building syndrome specifically, I need to first know, and I know you've probably already covered the super high level explanation, but like for me, I need it to be explained to me like I'm five once again, because I looked into it and it sounds like it's something that is crazy serious, but at the same time, if it can't be officially diagnosed, like how do we even know that it's a thing?
Well, and some of the effects are very common. So that's one of the problems. But sick building syndrome is any building that is associated with complaints by the occupants of illness without cause. That's really all it is people who have developed the sickness of some kind and don't know the cause. And if they change locations, it gets better. So if you spend a lot more time, like in the summer outside, and you always feel better. But in the wintertime, you're very run down, not the vitamin D rundown, but you start creating extreme fatigue. You start having throat itching and dryness. You have headaches, itchy skin. These are dry skin, which is a winter thing, especially up in these states, in these snow states. But and so a lot of these are very common. Eye irritation, nose irritation. It doesn't necessarily mean you have a cold, especially when it lasts long periods of time. It can be your environment.
So this is like a condition that is experienced by a shared group of people then.
Usually. Now, everybody, and I never pretend to be a doctor, and I always tell everybody, no matter what I say, talk to your physician. Don't think that you either A, have an illness of some kind because I said so. What I'm going to teach you is what it is. But I also don't want people to be fooled when the doctor says you're perfectly fine, you really don't have a problem, and you have chronic coughs and your eyes are always itchy because you're miserable. There are other outside influences that can lead to those. And it doesn't have to be your home. Actually, a lot of sick building syndrome cases can come from public schools. They come from office buildings. There's a lot. I mean, sometimes people basically live in their cars. They're driving constantly, and all that dirt and dander and all the things that are embedded in that enclosed environment, because you're not rolling the windows down in the wintertime, can affect you too. But there's more than just your own home. Factories, so places of work, can also lead to it, especially since in the US, we spend a lot of time at work.
A considerable amount of time, and if what I'm hearing is correct, that means just there's a lot of people that are rejoicing right now because they're like, see, I knew it. Every time I come to work, I just I get bummed, I get a headache, I get this weird pain in the neck, and it goes away as soon as I clock out. That's not a that's
Well,
not a made up condition, that's real, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
now it may be stress depending on where you work, but there are other things that can be out there, and it's usually identifiable. So years ago, when I was still in college and I was trying to find jobs that would let me work there and work around my class schedule, one of the jobs I did was I worked at H&R Block as a tax professional. And the job that I got was in Swartz Creek, but the building wasn't ready because it had flooded during the off season. And H&R Block only works during certain parts of the season. And now they have some year-round locations. This was not one of them. Well, it had flooded and sat until it was time to come in and look. And they were like, this isn't going to fly. There's, black mold up the walls. So they brought in one of those like fire restoration companies that came in and redid everything. They cut out part of the walls. They used this like vacuum system on the drywall, replaced the carpet, cleaned it down to the cement, and and the other companies put everything back. All of our computers were gone, all new computers. And so when you work at H&R Block, in most cases, it was me, my manager, who was a little bit older than me, and a lot of really old ladies. Like the average age in that work environment was certainly mid 70s. Not
Oh,
saying
got
it's
it.
bad, I'm just giving you an idea.
Just listing in demographics.
Yes, and about a month into our tax season, one of the ladies was hospitalized with a lung problem. Everybody, and again, you're working with elderly women. A lot of times people just assume age. Well, a second person went out sick with pneumonia, and then a third who was trying to tough it out was like, man, it's that kind of year, man. We're all getting sick. And that's when I started to think about it. I was learning about sick building syndrome at the University of Michigan. So I asked for the cleaning report from the fire restoration company, which by the way is impossible to read, impossible to look at the numbers and know what it means. So I started Googling what each of them meant, and the report they gave us showed that the amount of spores in the air for different contaminants was twice the level it should be, which means that they handed us a report that said the air is contaminated,
Mhm.
thanked us for the time, and cashed the check. So what I did is I took that report and wrote down in layman's terms what each thing meant and handed it to the boss at the time, who called the company back. And that's what it was. The air quality within the building was contaminated. There was
Mm.
bacteria in the air, there was mold spores that were still around. Most of it was around the air ducts where the drywall didn't get replaced. And what it was doing was just pushing it out into the air every time the HVAC system turned on,
Mhm.
circulating it. And some of the individuals in our work environment were not, because I had no problems whatsoever. It didn't bother me a bit. But with
Interesting.
people with compromised immune systems were unable to manage it. Once that was taken care of and our staff slowly worked their way back, they were fine the rest of the year.
That's crazy. And but I can see that being a thing because, during the initial onset of COVID even, there wasn't a whole lot of emphasis behind, circulation and air circulation. But then as we learned more about the virus and that, that is essentially how it's passed and how it's spread, there was an immediate 180, like, hey, certain businesses, restaurants, smaller office buildings, you guys need to invest in better circulation, or what's the word that I'm looking for, air purifier, or whatever the
The
case is.
filtering systems.
Yes, air filtering systems, to help reduce this possibility. And it sounds like this is something that places, companies, small businesses, large businesses alike, that like that should be a central focus then to prevent things like this, right?
Well, they have certain levels in which they are supposed to maintain, but who checks them?
Hmm.
I mean, who checks them? You have a large office building, but the back storeroom had flooded once and they mopped it up and moved on. They don't look at the boxes that were on the ground where the bottom is still wet. They don't look at how the drywall was touched quite often. And as the air, a lot of those rooms have an air return in them. So as it creates this stuff, it's just going to pull it into the system just to be delivered somewhere else. And that is something that very few people think about. If you work in a factory, remember, if you smell it, that's a particle.
Mhm.
So every time you're the smell of burning or the smell of oil or this or that that's a contaminant in the air that you're smelling. So it doesn't matter where you work. I mean, the fact of the matter is, when you turn on a Scentsy candle, you're putting evaporated wax particles into the air and you're sucking them down into your lungs.
Right.
It's a pleasant way to go, but it's still a contaminant. Now, is it going to kill you in a normal lifetime? Probably not. The stink pretties are usually food grade and those kinds of things. But
Mhm.
anything you smell is a contaminant of some kind.
And so here's another question that I just thought of. Then, with this being, this is obviously something that is an issue. Are there places where sick building syndrome would be more common than others then, like, or is it pretty much just anywhere where, water damage and pollutants aren't cleaned up properly? Can this be found more in a home than in a standard office building, or are there more places that are, or I'm sorry, are there places that are more susceptible to it?
Well, obviously, the older any structure is, the more likely. that you're going to have a contaminant, either from spills or damage. There's the older something gets, the more chances you have. And the newer something is, the more ventilation, the more technology is in them.
Got it.
So, first of all, that aside, because remember, there's a handful of things that you may not think of that are part of sick building syndrome. I
Right.
told you if you smell it, it's a contaminant. Obviously, mold and bacteria is an easy, low hanging fruit. But when you buy a new piece of furniture and you set it down in the living room and you sit on that furniture and you're like, oh, I love that smell of something new. That is off gassing. That is a chemical wash or a chemical process of something that was made giving off gases. So when you buy a brand new car, you get it and you're like, oh man, I love that new car
A new
smell.
car smell. Yeah.
That is off gassing of several different materials, the cleaners, all the things they use to produce it are literally clam baking in your vehicle so that when you get in it, that is all the chemical washes at once. We literally make stink pretty air fresheners for cars that smell like chemical toxins because we're so used to it.
Yikes. So, and it just to bounce back to an earlier point that you made that, obviously the older a building is, the more susceptible it would be. So that to me points to like a pretty considerable level of concern for like schools, right? Like most school buildings are already behind, like, in terms of upkeep and modernization. So that to me, it seems like this would be something that would be a tremendous issue in school buildings.
Yeah, unfortunately, in the United States, we don't like to fund things through the government. So, schools, any federally governed building, federally governed housing, all of that stuff tends to be old with minimal maintenance. So we take some of our most susceptible people throughout the United States. Some of those are aging facilities, and they don't get the same kind of funding that a new commercial or corporate building may have. And you may run into some things like this because of that, because you're not maintaining it in a fashion, or you're not funding it to where they can do the things they need to do for circulation purposes. A lot of times it's old buildings. Like my house does not have a ton of air returns because it's an old farmhouse that was retrofitted to be new, but it was never designed to have airflow the way it needs to be. We had to go in and add airflow in other places just so my furnace wouldn't blow up. I was burning up blower motors because there just wasn't enough air. So think of these large apartment complexes, schools, any of these facilities. They don't have the circulation a new building does.
Yeah, I'm immediately thinking of almost every place I loved, even as a kid. Not just school specifically, but like the library. Things like that. Like my God, and this is something that unfortunately, if there aren't steps that are put into place to mitigate the issue, then it basically just sticks around forever and ever and ever, and potentially worsens over time. Right?
Yeah, I mean, so I talked about off gassing. So all the furniture in your house at some level is still off gassing. It's giving off that chemical glaze over the wood so it protects it, or the Scotch guard on your couch so it will never get a stain is all still slowly. It just is more extreme when you buy it, but it will do it through most of its life. Matter of fact, by the time it's done off gassing, it's dust, dirt, dander, mites, those things that are now affecting you. So the couch has been there 6 years and you flop down on it. It's not going to have an off gas. It's going to be dirt, dust, dander, your skin.
Right. I was
It's
just about to
all
say
flying into,
skin.
flying into the air that you don't even think of,
Yeah.
especially if you have pets. If you have pets in the home, it goes up dramatically. And that's in our household. We have a ton of kids, a ton of pets. If you count, if I believe a ton of pets, the kids would want 40 more, but I believe a ton of pets. And we have a vacuum system that uses water as the filter to capture the vast majority of it. And we still, there's times the cat jumps down onto a bean bag and you can just see the poof
Wow.
that comes from it. And There's a lot of buildings that aren't even that can't deal with it. You know, I may not have the best ventilation, but we do better than most because we understand it.
Right.
And you can't just open a window. If you open a window and the pollen comes in, it's the exact same thing.
You're just spreading it around at that point.
Oh, I do it on purpose. I have one window at my house that I'm growing a lilac tree or bush or however you want to say it. So that when I open that window, because the air moves through there, it's going to blow the beautiful smell of lilac throughout the house. I did that, and then I married Jameson and Grayson, who have ridiculous allergies to everything outside. So now if I ever open that window, I'm risking killing half of my family.
Yeah.
But the point is that you can't just open a window to fix the problem.
Mm.
If you have carpet, you have a massive amount of contaminants in the home. Bottom
Mhm.
line, it is a contaminant sponge. It stores it in there. Every time you step on it, it poofs. Every time you lay on it, you move the furniture. We still have a little bit of carpet in the house, and it will end up being removed. We'll be at a point in which it's all hardwood floors because that can be cleaned. Carpet really can't.
Right.
It will never get to the status of clean. And so you have all that possible, mold spores can live in there. You've got bacteria, all the dirt, dander, that kind of stuff. That goes along with things we already knew: asbestos, radon, that we have houses tested for. These are all things that happen if you live in a household where someone smokes. When you go outside and you smoke, when you come back in, you smell like smoke. And if you smell it, it is there.
Right.
So these are all things you have to look at. The fact that if you have, they pushed everybody to move to natural gas. It's so much cheaper, move to natural gas. By the way, if they ever push you to something because it's cheaper, it's because they're about to raise the price because they're adding more people to it. Supply and demand. Don't
Right.
do it. But anyways, they moved a lot of people over to natural gas. Combustion is never a zero sum. It's not a mass balance. You're going to get a result. You're going to get an emission. And so all these that sit there with their pilots on in the house are constantly burning small amounts of natural gas and giving off the CO2 or even a little bit of methane. That is all contamination. It is all so in your house. Think about all the furniture, think about all the carpet,
Tons.
think about all the things that run from gas. And we're now just starting to get an idea of what is in the home that we're breathing all night when we sleep,
Mhm.
all day when we're home. So you can see where you could start to develop headaches or different things, different irritations, and you have no idea where the heck they came from.
Right. And it is, to me, that could be one of the biggest. I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it so I don't shock the audience, but like that's a pretty big uh, mind game, right? Like you start feeling off, and you remove yourself from one place, and you feel a little bit better, and then you get back to a place that you spend a considerable amount of time in. I would think it would work almost the exact opposite. Like you think, oh, I'm here so much, it couldn't be this. Maybe it was something that I ate, or something that maybe I switched laundry detergents, things like that. So I want to ask you this though now, because we know what sick building syndrome is, we know what it does, we know where it comes from. Is there a way to fix it or improve it in addition to the few things that you've already listed?
Well, there is a list of things that we can do to make it better. But I want to say a couple of things real quick before we get to that. The first one is Americans spend 90% of their time indoors, in your home, in your work, in your vehicle, in your local stores, wherever you're at. Americans don't seem to go outside very much unless they're trying to get from one indoor to another indoor. So we spend a ton of time, almost all of our time, in enclosed spaces. Number two, 1 in 4 buildings in the United States is classified sick.
Yikes.
which means that, and again, a lot of this stuff is normal. You're using normal cleaning solutions to clean your bathroom, and you're like, hey, that smells clean.
Right.
That smells like chemical wash. We've just been sold by commercials that that smell equals clean.
Hmm.
You know what clean smell is? No smell
That
is
makes
really
sense.
no particles going in your nose that register as a smell.
Yeah, I mean, you don't normally think about it like that though, because like you said, we've been sold on this idea of clean, and clean smells like, lemon pledge or pine sol and comet and
Hmm.
things like, but these are all like really harsh chemicals at the end of the day. And sure, it'll make that entertainment system or entertainment center look really nice and shiny, but what are we at the end of the day putting into our bodies as we use it?
Right. And it's because it's socially acceptable and it's been done for generations. But the problem is, Americans spend more and more time indoors. That number would change pretty dramatically if you go back 50 years or 100 years. And the concept is we're locking ourselves in smaller and smaller spaces and using more and more chemicals. There's a chance, doesn't mean that it happens. It doesn't, that this stuff doesn't generally seem to bother me at this point in my life, but there's always a chance that, because everybody's body chemistry is different, it can affect you.
Hmm.
64 million workers experience two or more of these symptoms on a regular basis throughout the year.
Oh,
And they may not even be accounting it to where they work or where they live. They just say, I have allergies. And they leave it at that. And they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, you got a runny nose and itchy eyes, you got allergies.
right. Here's a pill.
Unless they put the, what is it, 50 or 60 shots into your back, like they did Jamie, to create like the world's most painful grid system I've ever
Yeah.
seen. You don't know if you're actually allergic to those.
Hmm.
They're just guessing. They give you some kind of, Claritin or a pill or something, an inhaler, and send you on about your day.
Right.
Before I start talking about those things that we can do, remember that. I
Hmm.
mean, go outside is one thing we can do. And that's coming from a guy who doesn't spend a massive amount of time outside. Luckily, I have a Jameson, and she takes me hiking and all these wonderful places
You
that help
guys,
me out.
yeah, you go camping and all that. I did notice that. Now, before you go into, because you got me thinking now too, before you go into the fixes for it, um, the metaverse. There's a lot of focus and talk around this thing, which essentially creates a world inside of your own home, therefore giving you even less incentive to leave your house. So is this something that is going to make things worse in terms of sick building syndrome? Because I can see now, kind of like, I don't know if you've ever watched it, but there's classic Pixar movie called Wall-E, where everybody kind of stops
Get the
walking,
floaty
and
chair.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And everybody's indoors, and they're just living their lives out in VR, and everybody's ankles are weak because they don't walk. So like, is this metaverse thing going to be a harbinger of um a sick building syndrome plague in the near future?
Well, and for those of you who don't necessarily know Meta or Metaverse beyond Facebook, it is that VR meet space, that space where you plug into other people through a world. It's like playing your online games, but you're the character, you're the avatar. And so here's the deal: we are already, especially with COVID and that period of time, starting that process to getting to that point. Amazon brings most people their items that they would usually go shop for, clothing, stereos, whatever it happens to be. A lot of people, and it's proven through stock and it's proven through how much money they're making. Most people have stopped going to a store. They got used to doing it from home. So Amazon will drop off just about anything. I think last time I saw, you can get a tiny house on Amazon.
Yes.
Okay. Number two, either groceries. So our grocery store out here is Myers for $7. I can shop online and a nice lady will bring it all to my porch. I don't have to leave the house because the nice people are bringing me my groceries. And I got to tell you, $7 versus 2 hours of my time, plus whatever random things I pick up because I'm like a squirrel. It's much easier to do
Right.
that. And let's say I want to eat right now. Well, there's a whole industry for that too.
Mhm.
So we've already started designing industries to not leave home. But what you're talking about is you're going to stop leaving the room.
Exactly.
You will now take your home space and shrink it down even more. So really, that can be a problem. Really, it depends on the ventilation of the place and if you've taken some steps to make it better. But I think anytime we're in a small enclosed space for long periods of time, we're putting ourselves at risk anyways. I mean, everybody's going to be taking vitamin D tablets if there's not a window nearby.
Yeah, I see that, there's going to be these large meta cafes essentially where you bring your headset and you can meet up with friends or other people alike, and it is essentially going to become a thing to where there will be more of these spaces designed for these uses but less actual spaces for anything else. Like Meta could potentially kill off museums and art galleries, and your teacher's not taking you to, on a field trip to the planetarium anymore because you can experience it all and probably even more in the classroom.
Your cafes like that are
Mhm.
temporary. That's where people are going to learn to use it. But if we've learned anything through COVID, people stay home if
True.
given the opportunity. So you'll probably have a comfortable chair that lays back. You'll put on your headset and you'll spend the next 6 hours in a world that doesn't exist. Or, sorry, a digital world. It exists. It's just not where you are physically at.
Mhm.
So the important things are to understand, first of all, that sick building syndrome can exist. That is first and foremost that when you smell something, it's a contaminant, pleasant or not, and to be mindful of that. A lot of times in realistic sustainability, we don't get all yelly and screamy at you. We just try to teach you which is which, and you do what you can. And that's what this is. Understand that if you smell it, it's a contaminant. It doesn't matter if it came from you, the dog, the carpet, whatever. It is particles in the air triggering it in your brain, and you're sucking them down into your lungs. So, number one, make sure your home has as good of ventilation as humanly possible. Bathrooms have vents to the outside, laundries have vents to the outside. Anything that is gas driven is vented as it's supposed to. Now, granted, you're keeping it out of your house, you're moving it to the atmosphere, but first things first, we take care of you. Then we work on other stuff when it comes to the environment. But so, first of all, first and foremost, the best possible airflow and air movement, keeping air going. Now, the best defense overall is good air filters. Good ones, real ones, not just the ones you can buy that stop like a squirrel from moving through, but things with small enough spots, and they're expensive,
Mhm.
which is a problem too. These are things that need to be subsidized so they're affordable because we would spend a lot less on air filters than we would healthcare.
Wow.
So these ones with better MERV ratings is what they're called. You want to go with good filters. And here's the deal: you spend a ton of money on a filter and you want to leave it there for 3 years. It doesn't work like that. We have to swap them. It doesn't matter if you have a small air filter in your room or the one on your furnace. Those have to be changed on a regular basis to continue to catch all of that. Because over time you're cleaning the overall environment that you're in. And that is by far the best way to get as much of it at a high volume as quickly as possible during the furnace running or the air conditioner running. Now, there are a few other things. I know this one is a bit debated, but primarily debated from air quality companies that sell filters.
Mm.
Plants.
Ah.
Plants can certain plants basically absorb certain chemicals,
Mhm.
and all of them absorb CO2, which is a contaminant to us. So plants, it takes a lot of plants if you want to purify a room. It basically turns it into a jungle, but every plant you have helps. It certainly does not hurt. They give off oxygen, and oxygen is not only a cooling, but it's a pretty good thing for us. So that is something that can be done. I wouldn't say it's as efficient or as useful as really good filters. But honestly, I think plants do more than clean the air, but also help your attitude.
Mhm.
You know, there's other benefits to plants other than the oxygen and the air scrubbing.
I was waiting for that one to jump out because my wife is a huge believer in plants. There are plants in, I don't want to say every room, but almost every room in the house. Like there is a plant somewhere around it, and she's all about, the air quality and making sure that we keep them because they do absorb, that those toxins, some toxins that are in the air. And I was curious about that too. Like, can you outpace a good air filter with enough plants? I guess, but I got the I got the answer to my question there. Unless you are legitimately living in a greenhouse, you're probably not going to be able to do that. So practically, controlling your air quality is going to be the better strategy.
Well, and so I love the smell of a greenhouse because it's a high oxygen environment. But as for clean air, because air filter is never going to give you more oxygen,
Mhm.
it's just going to pull the contaminants out of the air. So plants have one advantage. But if you're living in an older house, it's time to invest more in better filtering systems because that is going to be the best possible way to reduce the amount of contaminants that you breathe. And I'm a big plant person, by the way.
Mhm.
Also, ton of natural light because some of those things in the air are living. And you see UV light that they put inside of furnaces now to help stop viruses and different living organisms. These organic compounds that are coming through. I think it's VOCs,
Mhm.
and so a lot of natural light does the same thing. So having the curtains open, the natural light in, on top of the fact that you'll feel better because you're getting vitamin D and it's nice outside. Now, if it's
Right.
gray outside, yeah, it's up to you. But getting nice, good sunlight into the house can do several different things, including zap some of those things that are in the air and get them gone. Dusting. Now, here's another thing. When you take your vacuum, next time the sun is beating into the room and you got that like light that shines to the floor. Move your vacuum right into that light because you can see dust
Right.
real good in the sun like that. Plug that bad boy in and turn it on. It's like a dust explosion when that motor kicks on. The filters in those vacuums are just as important as the one in the house because the moment you turn that on and start the air pressure, it just fires everything into the air.
Mhm.
Jamie couldn't be in the house when I vacuumed before we had one that filtered with water because nothing comes out the back of this one now.
Right. Okay.
But our other one, if she's here at Dabble, she really has a hard time using the vacuum, or if I use it, she can tell when she gets there, like, oh, did you just vacuum? Because of how much it just spits it up into the air.
Yeah, you're just recycling it at that point.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's filling the canister, but another chunk of it is coming out the back of the exhaust.
Right.
So those filters on those are not permanent. Those have to be changed too on a regular basis or they're no longer useful.
Mhm.
So yeah, next time you got light coming in the room, you want to really be disappointed in your vacuum. That's the task right there. Reduce the amount of carpet because you can walk around with a Swiffer and get everything.
Right.
But a carpet is a holding space. Have you ever tore up carpet before? There's like
Mhm.
sand underneath it.
Yeah.
That is just contaminant over time, constantly going through the whole filtering process until you get a sandbox under your padding that is under your carpet. You will never get it all out.
Mhm.
And I understand I have always loved carpet for the warmth because we live in Michigan,
Right.
but little by little, it's all disappearing.
Mhm.
Rugs can be cleaned outside, they can be washed. Our carpet can't.
And that's one of those things to where, playing devil's advocate, I would hear a lot of people go, "Well, I can't particularly get rid of my carpet because I can't afford it," or I
Mhm.
don't want to because my cost of heating is going to skyrocket with hardwood floors. Are there any other alternatives outside of ditching carpet completely?
Filters, 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 because you know what's coming in the air.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter if, and now if you rip that carpet out and bought new carpet, it smells like new carpet.
Hmm.
And by the time it stops smelling like new carpet, it has the same contaminants as your old carpet. So it doesn't matter. So if you, and again, realistic sustainability, we do the things knowing what the results are, and we
Hmm.
try to compensate to the best of our abilities in different ways. So make sure that you have better filtering processes. Keep the carpet. Don't spend the money on replacing it, but spend a little more on that filter you put into the furnace. Maybe get a couple. You go through garage sales and you find some nice air filters for the rooms. Do those and spend a little on the filters for those. Compensate in some way, because I think one of the things when it comes to sick building syndrome is taking it serious,
Hmm.
knowing that it exists and trying to minimize the effect. Now, you really want to do something, go outside. I mean, yes,
That's
there's contaminants out there too, but it's those enclosed spaces that hurt us most.
right, because outside, and I'm not as well versed with you as you are, but I would assume outside you have less of a chance of running into, this thing that has been recycled, right? Fresh air is a genuine thing, and so when you're
Mhm.
outside, you're taking in just that, even though there's still contaminants outside, and we know that. Unless you live in an industrial city, or somewhere where there's a lot of factories, I would like to imagine that it's going to be the best solution anyway, though, right?
Oh, I mean, people who go hiking, not only are they getting exercise, they're surrounded by green,
Hmm.
and you're going to get a much cleaner air in those cases. So here's one of the things that bothers me about the trajectory of our future. It was really funny in the 80s when people started seeing bottled water. Like, it's water, guys. We get water anywhere we want water. When did I get so thirsty? I got to take my own private piece of water or bottle of water with me everywhere I go. It's $1 billion industry.
Hmm.
When Jamie and I were on a trip, I think it was about a year ago, I said it on the show, I saw canned air.
That's the thing.
Oh, this is canned air from the mountains, over in this special country. It's still just air. And they're
Hmm.
literally just pumping it out and pressurizing it in a can. It reminds me of Spaceballs in a sense. That movie, they're cracking cans of Perrier. But if we continue to contaminate environments, and we have factories contaminating even the environment of cities, and you have to go far away to get to a clean atmosphere where you can go hiking and have that smell of fresh air, not all of us can do it. Either
Right.
A, we're working too many hours just to survive, or B, I don't have a way to get there.
Hmm.
They're going to start buying canned air as a luxury item. I find that to be grossly unacceptable. I'm already a
But
little ticked off about the water, as we all know, but you start doing it with air, I'm going to get angry.
yeah, I try not to poke the bear so much with the bottled water thing anymore. But listen, if I see canned air as a thing, you better believe I will bring several shows worth of material to you.
So we just need to take air seriously.
Hmm.
And we need to, to the best of our ability, not allow companies to taint that air. And then be mindful of the spaces we're in, because we get one life that we know of, and we want to make sure it's as long as we want it to be. And that's going to be something that helps. So we want to take our air quality very seriously.
Absolutely. So, if you had to, it kind of encapsulate or in a nutshell the discussion around sick building syndrome, as I asked you in the beginning of the show to explain it to me like I'm five, how would you, to the average person, how would you propose a short, quick fix, or improving air quality to somebody that's interested in doing it? I know we went over all the different ways that you can improve it, but let's encapsulate it in a short, brief elevator pitch. What do we need to do?
Well, first of all, if you're an individual who has chronic illness, make sure you see a physician. That is first and foremost. They will always know more than I do. And if you're not getting the correct answers, responses, or help, get a new physician. Just because you've had this physician for a long time does not mean we don't get second opinions. Your health is 100% worth it every single time. Now, if you are an individual with chronic illness and no one can really seem to pinpoint where it's at, that's when I would say, let's take a chance and change some actions around the house. Maybe we save up a few extra dollars to have a professional cleaning service come in and clean. Maybe, and I just found out it is outrageously expensive to have a company come in and clean your air ducts. My house, it would be $800.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not necessarily sure that is something that is achievable by many. I sure the heck didn't want to do it. And I didn't. But you can take the vacuum hose and go as far as you can and start minimizing some of that stuff. But really, what I'm going to tell you is if you have chronic illness and you don't know where it's coming from, buy better filters. And if you live in an apartment complex, look into a good air filter. A lot of companies and a lot of people buy super expensive $1,200, $1,000 air filters, and then they end up on Marketplace. Go get it for 50 to $100 and just make sure you spend the money on replacing the filters when they're supposed to be replaced and see if it helps. That might be a small cost than always feeling bad. And that's where I say, if you have this now, if every winter you're not feeling good, welcome to the rest of us. Vitamin D is a real thing. But if you get itchiness or scratching or dryness and you have humidifiers everywhere and you're still getting this, maybe it's time to look. Maybe it's time to see. Look for standing water. Get some UV light in there. Pull the curtains up. Do some things to help yourself. Really, what I want everybody to know is that it's a thing and you can do things about it.
Awesome.
So really, that's all we have for this week. So you got to go and experience something completely different than you would have even ever discussed on Curated Culture.
Ever.
You're learning about the ways to improve your home. Now, notice we're not doing doom and gloom. It can be helped. That's not why we do things here. We want to focus on the things that we can do to make things better. And as long as everybody's doing these little steps, finding these little things, knowing that, it exists and okay, that smell or this smell, I can probably get rid of that by doing this, or this, then we're going to come out ahead. We're always going to do better. So that's all we had for this week. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend or on social media. If you wanted to help realistic sustainability, click that like, click that follow, leave me a 5-star review. From last week's episode that I obviously read them. I responded to one of them, and it makes me feel good. And of course, if you want, if realistic sustainability, you feel like it brings value to you, go to the website, greeninyourlife.org/podcast or anchor.fm and search realistic sustainability. That's where you can donate that 99 cents a month, that little bit that helps us chug right along week after week here at Realistic Sustainability. We always appreciate it. And and for those of you who already do, thank you very much. Rob, you've got to plug your stuff before I close us all the way out. So, I gotta hear about Curated Culture and all that fun jazz.
Yeah, we will hear about Curated Culture, but first, I'm going to plug something that I'm really excited for, which is a collaboration of sorts between Greening Your Life and the Curated Culture. We're going to kind of be putting our brains together and bringing you a mix of some new social media content for Greening Your Life specifically. We're going to be throwing out some sound bites, infographics, things to help you make those changes in your life. As Mike always likes to say, little bit, big bit. So be on the lookout for those things across the Greening Your Life socials. I'm sure Mike will share those shortly. As for me, I am a huge, massive, giant nerd. I talk about all things tech, pop culture, and society over on my site, The Curated Culture. And you can catch up with me in all of my wackiness via The Curated Culture at The Curated Culture on Facebook and Instagram, or _Curated Culture on Twitter. Or you can follow me personally at Robbie Diesel if you want some fun rants about pro wrestling or sneakers, because as you can see, I'm very much into those. So yeah, man, thank you. I appreciate you always having me on. I genuinely enjoy doing these because there's not been one time that I've been on that I have not learned something. And I'm a big believer and a big fan in what you do. It is necessary and it is needed today. So thank you very much for having me.
Man, you're gonna make me blush. Well, no, and really I do appreciate you always bring a new and fresh perspective. It's something that is very, I think, helpful to the show, and I do appreciate you always taking the time to join us here. And remember, not only you, but everybody else, we're only getting together each week to get a little bit better. That little bit, big bit. I promise over time, if you just keep your head down, keep doing the right thing, you'll look back someday and go, man, look how far I've come. So thank you all very much for listening. I'm Mike.
I am Rob.
And at least I will see you next week.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Rob, and I'm the host of The Curated Culture, a weekly podcast dedicated to dissecting the latest and greatest news from around the world of tech and pop culture. Now, we all know the internet can be a busy, noisy place, so let us calm that noise for you. Join us as we discuss the latest and greatest topics from the people and sources that matter most. Check us out every Thursday as we jump into fresh, original content, new interviews, and a host of other subjects that we know you'll find interesting. So jump into whatever your favorite podcast app is and search The Curated Culture. Make sure you subscribe to the show so you don't miss an episode. And in the meantime, we'll catch y'all on the air.